So that's 22 stitches. It reaches the length of the needle, and yes, we have a good length left. Hi and welcome to Knit with Hannah. I'm Hannah. I'm here with Knitting Natter to help you learn to knit the easy way. Okay, why is she doing the long tail cast on, you might think? I do advocate that you learn cast on methods and you use them when you need them. And probably 95% of the time I use the cable cast on method. But there are times when just knowing another cast on method, because it's useful in particular places, can be helpful. So the long tail cast on method is known to be that little bit more stretchy. It can also be something that just helps you understand yarn and understand casting on a bit better. Where does the yarn move when you're casting on? What parts of the yarn do what when you're casting on? Actually, it's really useful to get your fingers doing different things when you're knitting, just so that you're aware of these tools and these techniques when you need them for something else. So in that respect, I say why not learn it even if you don't use it very much. So the long tail cast on is loved by many people, and I'm not that keen, and I would say if you are a very early beginner knitter, you could make mistakes with this method. So go and find a different one to do, or just watch this and be curious. I am going to take you step by step with this, because choosing how much yarn you have to spare when you start the long tail cast on is the key. I'm going to show you how you decide how much yarn you need and what a finished long tail cast on looks like first. Then I'm going to unravel it and we will start over. So if you think I'm taking a long time getting to the actual cast on, I'm doing that for a reason. Let's get to it. Let's start casting on. I have a completed long tail cast on here, just so we can have a look at it and see which parts of the yarn are doing what on the needle, and that will help us decide how much yarn we need for the long tail cast on, because we need 2 lengths of yarn. So the first bit we're going to look at is this piece of yarn here. This is the length that we have to give ourselves so we have extra yarn to create the cast on. Now this piece of yarn doesn't loop around the needle, it does this bit here. So we have quite a few just pieces there. So we have a single loop going all the way between one stitch and the next. So that's twice the length in between the stitches. That's why we need a long tail when we're knitting the long tail cast on. That's what this is, the tail. So we have the length twice in between the stitches. Now the yarn that goes to the ball of yarn is what makes the loop around the needle. So just be aware of that as we are selecting the yarn and deciding how much we need. I'm going to take this off now. We have 22 stitches on here, so we kind of get the idea that it's just about the length of the needle. So I'm going to take this off and we're going to start over. So you may agree with me that we had probably a bit too much of a tail there as we finish the cast on. So what I'm going to do is, generally speaking, you need twice the length of the number of stitches, plus more, so you've got an extra bit there in case you need to sew in the ends or anything like that. So what we're going to do is just remember that the 22 stitches fit quite happily on this needle. So we're going to have it. So we're going to have the yarn going twice along this needle, twice, and then we'll have it a third time as well. So we have the extra yarn in case it's needed and to do any finishing off once we finish knitting. So you can see that we've got quite a little bit less than we had first time. You can see where it's crinkly. That's where we started off last time. So from here I'm going to create the slip knot, and that is like this. I'm winding the yarn around the tips and then around near the knuckles, and the needle goes underneath the first loop and pulls that second loop through so that it's sat on the needle. Okay, so there you go. We have 2 lengths of yarn now, and this is where It may look complicated. It's just a case of getting used to it. We have to hold the yarn in the left hand and we're holding the needle in the right hand. Now, sometimes you may see instructions which don't actually do a slip knot to start with. It's just a loop. That's fine as well. If you feel happy with that, that's okay. I actually feel happy with the slip knot. It feels more secure and I'm less likely to use it. But I do put my finger on it at the top here, just so it doesn't fall off the needle. But we're now going to hold the yarn like this, making sure that the yarn to the ball is at the top and the yarn that's loose is at the bottom. And we're going to hold it there. I'm going to put my 3 fingers around it there so it's held in the palms. And then I put my thumb and index finger in between those 2 threads. Okay, now this is where we make the stitches. So if you have watched the thumb loop cast on, this is exactly the same process. The yarn moves in exactly the same way. We're just doing it differently. So what we're going to do is move the needle underneath that piece of yarn by the thumb and over that piece of yarn by the index finger. And then this loop that we've created with the thumb goes over the end of the needle like that. That's what creates the stitch. There we go. We now have 1 stitch. I'll show you that again. We have the needle going underneath the far piece on the thumb, over the piece on the index finger, and then that loop we've made with the thumb, we just take that over the end of the needle. So that's 3 stitches. Under, over, and pull that through. Under, over, and pull that through. Now here you can see already it's slightly untwisting. That's just the way that you're moving the yarn as you're making the stitches. So you can let go of the yarn, let it retwist. And this is the ideal thing, you see. We have this one that's untwisting as we make the stitches. And that's the loose one, so it's easier to let it retwist. Okay, so we're going to hold that with the 3 fingers and put the thumb and the index finger in between the other stitches. So that's 5 stitches already. Under by the thumb, over by the index finger, and pull that loop over the end of the needle. Under, over, and then pull that loop you've made with the thumb over the end of the needle. And then you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just pulling that with the thumb to tighten it slightly. Okay, under, over, and through. Under, over, and through. So once again, I'm just going to let that retwist. Under, over, and through. Under, over, and through. Under, over, and through. The thing with this is that it's really difficult to establish how much yarn you need on your tail depending on the thickness of the yarn. So if anything, you overestimate rather than underestimate. That's my tip for you today. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We just need 10 more stitches. Under, over, and then pull that needle through. 1, 2. So that's 22 stitches. It reaches the length of the needle. And yes, we have a good length left. That is ideal for winding in, for weaving in the ends, and ideal for just doing a little bit of a seam if necessary. So that is your long tail cast on. Like I said, it's better to overestimate rather than underestimate how much yarn you need. If you're in any doubt at all, give yourself a bit more. And generally speaking, if you're knitting something with a long tail cast on, you don't want it tight. So don't pull the stitches too tight as you're creating them. The long tail cast on is ideal for an elastic edge. So just give yourself that breathing space in between the stitches. Okay, so that is the long tail cast on. And yes, it looks a bit complicated, But like I said, it can be helpful just to get used to using yarn in a different way, get used to your fingers using the yarn differently, and it means that when you need specific techniques that don't necessarily use this exact cast on method, but use something similar for a particular reason, then it's in your toolbox. What you then need to do won't feel quite so difficult. So do go and have another look at it. You can always rewind one of these videos and re-watch a part if it looks too complicated. Lots of other cast on videos on this channel over in the cast on playlist, and of course there's a whole cast off playlist as well, so do go and have a look at them too. Go and have a look at last week's video. That was another confusing cast on. That was called the provisional cast on. You might find that one interesting too. Like I said, it's just another thing to have available in case you need it. Thanks so much for joining me today. Do subscribe and click on the bell for notifications. I'm here every Tuesday, every week, with a brand new video. I do hope I'll see you again next week. I'll say goodbye for now. Have a great week. Happy knitting.